Hello once again, everybody. Welcome to Geekfest Rants. Today we are continuing our series on the 2010 fall preview recap shows. We are tackling today Saturday and Sunday, the weekend. Not as many shows as during the week, but enough to talk about. Once again, joining me today is Steve Mona. Say hi, Steve.
Hey, Carlos.
All right. Saturday is a pretty light day as far as I'm concerned. The only thing I'm interested in is Saturday Night Live. How about you?
Honestly, I have nothing on Saturdays that I'm watching.
Wow. Well, SNL is the only thing I watch on Saturdays. Again, one of these shows that's been on forever, longer than I've been watching TV probably. And sometimes it's one of these shows where you feel that it should only be an hour instead of an hour and a half. And the funny thing is that when you peel off, obviously, the commercials and the musical guests, you're left with about an hour's worth of material. And out of that hour, sometimes, 45, 30 minutes might be the good stuff. But it's, again, one of these shows that you can it's good to have on your DVR, or you can stream it on Hulu, and you can just kind of go next, and catch up, because you'll hear about on the news or something about, oh my God, they did this unbelievably funny skit. And then that's where it is. Usually around political times, elections, they go completely berserk with the comedy on that stuff. But it's one of my continuous shows, and it's also interesting to see where like the next big stars are coming from. You can always count on watching them there developing their craft.
I think with SNL, I think with the advent of the internet, and as you said, Hulu and all these online delivery systems, for me, I would just say somebody would have to tell me there was a great skit on, or it would go viral pretty quickly, and you'd see the skit, and for me, then I watched the whole show. You just see they would usually have like a little flash of brilliance, and the rest of it would be mediocre. Yeah. And it's probably been 15 years since I watched SNL on a regular basis.
Wow. Let's jump over to Sunday now. Sunday, I have a couple of shows that I still watch. One of them is CSI Miami, which didn't used to be a Sunday show. I think it used to be a Wednesday show, or a Monday show. I'm sorry, Monday. Again, CSI, as I mentioned on previous episodes, it's my Law and Order equivalent as far as Steve is concerned. Miami is one of, not the best one. Sometimes the worst one. Sometimes New York is the worst one. It depends. It kind of alternates between Miami and New York. It's just, in one way, it's funny because you get David Caruso, and he's almost a caricature of himself now. It's kind of fun in watching him trying to be serious about stuff, and the way he delivers these lines is just hilarious. But it's maybe one of my one of my weird shows that I continue to keep watching just because I'm waiting for it to end. And I don't know if these CSIs are ever going to end. Hopefully they haven't. I mean, I'm grateful that they haven't added any new ones like they do with Law and Order. They just keep going. But I don't know. It might be interesting if they start canceling some of them, because there's just too many of them. And again, I got to keep watching because I want to make sure I finish them. Now that it's on Sundays, that again, not a great sign. You move a show to a Sunday. I mean, like I thought Friday was the kiss of death. Sunday, they might as well just tell you the show's over. I mean, I've never heard of a primetime show on a Sunday. It's really weird. The other thing I watch on Sundays is the Fox, most of the Fox animated lineup. I don't watch The Simpsons, but I do watch The Cleveland Show, The Family Guy, and American Dad. And those three shows they're almost like one big show if you think about it. I mean, they all stem from The Family Guy. First you have Family Guy, then you had American Dad, then you had The Cleveland Show. Family Guy's still the best. They put out the best stuff. American Dad is probably the second best, and The Cleveland Show is probably the third best. Now, obviously, it might be because of the fact that it's the newest, but Family Guy it's still a hilarious show, and you can tell that they put their best stuff on that show. And it also spawns off all the Star Wars specials and that sort of stuff.
Which a lot of geek stuff in Family Guy.
Yeah, and they definitely sprinkle it on throughout the show. Another animated show I watch on Sundays, actually I record it on Sundays because I don't have time to watch it, is The Venture Brothers, which is one of these Cartoon Channel adult cartoons. This is something I definitely would recommend all of our geek friends to watch, including yourself, Steve. Obviously, it is so good. It is so funny. It is it parodies comic book heroes and the comic book way that people interact and how you're used to, like the stereotypical comic book material. They make fun of it so much. The show is basically a knockoff of Johnny Quest.
Oh, okay.
It's a rip off of Johnny Quest, but in a funny way, and they're basically making fun of Johnny Quest, and they
Mm-hmm.
introduced typical comic book heroes into the mix. But obviously they can't rip
Okay.
them off that bad. But like you'll see like the Fantastic Four, you'll see like the I forget the doctors, the lead guy in the Fantastic.
Mr.
Mr.
Fantastic.
Fantastic, they have a character like him who's old and like bitter and stuff like that, and they do that all the time with classical vintage comic book characters. So again, I would
I think I should check it out.
definitely
Yeah.
recommend it. I think it's on its third or fourth season. I would say
Okay.
start from the beginning if you want to just rent or
Sure.
download a couple of episodes. I'm pretty sure you'll get hooked on them right away.
Okay. Sounds good.
Let's jump to AMC on Sundays. Currently, we're ending two seasons of number one Rubicon, which is a new show on AMC, and the other one is Madman. Now, I know
Madman.
you don't watch Rubicon, but you do watch Madman. But Rubicon first premiere this season. It's a political thriller kind of conspiracy theory kind of show. It has one of the stars from the Pacific, I believe.
Yes.
Interesting show, very intrigued, political. Like I said, conspiracy. Very like if you ever watch The Conversation with Gene
Mm-hmm.
Hackman, it's got a lot of that. Like very paranoid, investigating a certain number of
Mm-hmm.
murders that happen and suicides. It's an interesting show. I don't know if it's going to last. It always runs into the danger of being way too convoluted, where you have so many mysteries happening and so many investigations that it could just kind of fall on itself.
Yeah, that's what scared me off.
And in a way it's kind of like it has that X-File feel. If you remember the X-File shows that dealt with the political cover-ups and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
assassinations and stuff like that. Obviously, none of the supernatural or space stuff, but it's very it's a very crazy show. But like I said, I'm enjoying it. If it goes away, it won't break my heart. But if it's here, I'll continue to see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
The other show is one I know you watch is Madman, and we're about to wrap up what the fourth season or
Fourth season,
yeah.
yeah.
It's I mean, you tell me about it. Tell me about how you feel.
I love the show. I think partially because I love the atmosphere of the show, even though I didn't live through the '60s. I love how it brings the '60s to life. I almost Part of me wishes I was a man in the '60s. I have to be honest, but
As opposed to a woman in the
as
2000s.
opposed to yeah. uh, it's got an incredible cast, and the writing is spectacular. I do love the way it evokes that time, and from what I'm told by my parents who watched the show, that it's mostly spot on in terms of how it portrays not only the fashion and the style of the time, but the way men and women acted and interacted in the workplace and outside the workplace. But I think the characters are very compelling, and I think that John Hamm as Don Draper is just a phenomenal actor. And the only thing that bothers me about the show, not this season but last season, was sometimes he goes off on these
Retreats. Yeah.
journeys, these retreats, and has these existential moments, and they last for 3 episodes, and he disappears, and you're wondering what the hell's going on. Those I don't care for, but love his dynamic with Peggy and that whole mentor-student thing that they have going. Don is not a really great person. He's got a lot of flaws, heavy
Oh yeah.
flaws, but there is something about Peggy that he's compelled to help her and guide her, even though he's not the best mentor, father figure, whatever you want to call it. But the one episode this season where he made her stay late was, I think, just phenomenal. And the fact that the typical thing that happens with Don, that happens with Don and women, does not happen with them, and he has a completely different dynamic with her than anybody else on the show. Uh, is great. I think it's probably on purpose, but the character of his ex-wife Betty grates on me a lot. So the fact that she hasn't played a huge role in this season, about she's a great actress, January Jones, but she's a really, really hard character to like. The rest of the cast, I think, is phenomenal, and I think the show's going to be on for quite some time. And what I hope to see is that as the '60s go on, and I'm very eager to see how the characters embrace the changes of the '60s because they're on the cusp of really getting into like the hippie times and Vietnam and all this other stuff into the mid to late '60s, and I'm really eager to see if they do another time jump, maybe a year or 2 years. They did do that in the earlier seasons, and I think it's one of the best shows on television.
Yeah, talk about a non-genre show as far as
Oh,
the
sure.
geek aspect. This is probably the last show I would probably watch when you describe
Yeah.
it about what it is. And the way I hooked onto the show, I think it was just the critical praise for it. People kept saying this show is amazing.
Yeah.
And even when I watched the show, it's kind of like, why am I watching this? This is like the topics really don't appeal to me in terms of I'm not into I'm not into the style, the look. I'm not into any of that. But I think in my particular case, what draws me to the show is it's almost like the beginning of, as far as I'm concerned, what would be now the modern political views and social views of where we live. Uh, I kind of
Sure.
see like like if you
The seeds are being
right, it's
planted.
all happening there in front of you. It's like, where did people get that idea that women should behave a certain way? And it's like, oh wow,
Right.
that's where it didn't start there, but
Yeah.
that's where it was gelling into
Mm-hmm.
what is today. And where did some people get the idea that whether you're dealing with racial issues or sexual issues, that the norms of today, they came from that era too. They seem to have switched.
Yeah.
Before that time, here's the rules. These are the rules. And after that time is where somebody said, no,
Right.
I think things should be a little different. And that's what
Yeah.
appeals to me in the show is how things are changing and how people are behaving differently, and how your
Right.
main character, which I guess we won't find out until the end, is he gonna just, you know, crash and burn with his old style of doing things, or is he gonna adapt
Is he
and
going to
become a better
adapt?
person, in my particular view,
Right.
and kind of move on,
Right.
and even like some characters are like kind of like nobody's safe in the show. It's like even his children are all screwed up, and you can tell,
Screwed
like if you
up.
go forward 20, 30 years, it's like, how did this guy get so screwed up? Oh my God, here's where it started. His family was a mess, even though it looked like the perfect family. It's a
Right.
complete disaster. And I that's what
Right.
I love the best about the show is these little, it's like that explains, and I start kind of like, I remember you were mentioning when we were talking about Modern Family, you start to apply certain things that happen to your family or even in parenthood. I kind of apply this show to like, okay, this is why I have
This is
such a
why.
rough time dealing with this person, is because this is how they were
Yes.
brought up, and this,
This is how they were
and
brought
it's
up.
like,
Well,
go ahead.
and you made an excellent point because the '60s were a decade of such huge
Traumatic
change,
change.
traumatic change that the world was a certain way for a whole century pretty much. 20, 30 years the world, I mean, pretty much things went on as they did. In the '60s is ground zero for the world that you and I were born into. We didn't live through it, but we are living with the changes that started at that time. And it's fascinating to see
and
how it
and
played out.
also, as if you look at like how life progresses in terms of, even though it was so long ago, even if it was before we were born, we still have to deal with people that are clinging on for their for their lives. They're clinging on to that mentality
To that.
of, no,
Right.
this is not how it works. This is how it
No.
works. You belong
Yeah.
here, you don't belong there. And
Right.
that kind of thing,
Absolutely.
and that's what I found fascinating about the show. Everything else is like set decorations as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I guess it's those hidden messages that you keep hearing. But yeah,
Hmm.
man, I love the show, and again, it's the last show in the world I would be watching, but it's great.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I think that wraps it up for the weekend part of our preview show. Once again, everybody, thank you very much for joining us at Geekfest Rants. And we have only one more episode in this series, and that is the one that's going to deal with shows that are on hiatus and shows that have been canceled. So once again, on behalf of Steve Bona and myself, thank you very much for joining us. See you next time.